Greetings! In this video, we are going to continue our discussion on iterative logic by actually using loops to solve some problems. In the previous video, we were focused on the structure of a while loop and why we needed to use loops in general, but now we're actually going to see how we can use these loops in order to solve some interesting programming problems. To get us started, I thought I'd like to remind us on the four basic components of a while loop. If you remember, the steps of the loop can spell the word item. So I stood for initializing your variables. So we talked about the idea of a loop control variable. So in this example, I would be the variable that is used by our loop to determine if we are still looping, right? You may need to declare some other variables for your problem, and we will show you an example of when you need to do that. T is test. This is where we look at our loop control variable and we compare it to see if we are done with the loop. So as long as this comparison is true, we loop. If it's false, we don't. In E, this is where we actually type the code that we want the loop to do over and over and over. Sometimes it's just as simple as printing, but other times you need to get inputs from the user or other things. And finally, in the modify step, this is where we take our loop control variable and we change it in some way so that when we go back up to this line and we look at it again, it's not you don't get stuck in an infinite loop. We always have to change the loop control variable somehow inside the loop. Alright? So I am told that there are 3 problems that we get to work on. 3? Alright, so let's do it. Easy, medium, and hard? Alright, let's go! First problem. Alright, so write an algorithm that prints from 0 to a user-specified value counting by 2s. Alright, that's easy. So let's go through each phase. Initializing our loop control variable. Alright, so we still want to count starting at 0, so that's fine. We also need to keep track, let's see, to a user-specified value. So we also need to know what value the user wants. So I'll just say user value, and we'll go ahead and grab that value from the user real quick. Alright, now we want to count from 0 to the value that the user had. So here, it's counting from 0 to 10, it looks like. So I'll just replace that with user value. So now we are, if I press play correctly, if I type 10, it will print out all the values from 0 to 9. Okay, that's mostly what we want right now, so we'll keep it going. And then the execute phase. I still want to print out the numbers, so that's working. And then modify by loop control variable. So instead of counting by 1s, I want to count by 2s. So I could just put a 2 here. And now when I press play, and I say 10, it counts from 0, 2, 4, 6. Okay, that works. What if I wanted it to go all the way from 0 to 10? What would I have to change in the code? Here, quick 10-second quiz. Alright, so to actually do that, what we would have to do is go up here to our exit condition, and then we would say it's less than or equal to. So that way, when it's 10, you have 10 is less than or equal to 10, which is true, it would do it. And then when it's 12 is less than or equal to 10, that would be false and you would leave. So there you go. Alright, so that one seemed easy enough. What else you got? Alright, in this problem, we are asking the users for the number of grades to input. We're getting that many values, and then we are printing the total. Alright, so let's go over and we'll just replace everything and get us back to a nice clean state. So I'm going to clear this out. Alright, so now let's take a look. We need to get the number of grades from the user. Alright, so again, we're going to start at 0 for our loop control variable, and we're just going to say num grades, and it's going to be equal to a value that the user provides us. And then we need to get that many values away from the user. Okay, the important thing to remember about the way we've structured our item loop, the standard one, is that this number here, whatever you put here, is how many times this code will execute. So if I put 5, it will do this line 5 times. So if I need to get 5 numbers from the user, I will make this equal to num grades. So now it's going to do this line num grades times. And then instead of printing, I'm going to get a value from the user. So I'm going to say the grade is equal to, and I assume that grades can be floating point numbers. So there we go. And now I have my grades. So we should test this, right? I should be able to say 5, and I should be able to get 5 grades, and then the program should end. 90, 80, 90, 70, and 50. And good, the program did end as soon as I typed the 5th one. So we know that's good. What's the next thing we need to do? We need to print the total. Okay, so how do we print the total? If I was to give you just like a list of numbers, if I said like 5 and 7 and 3, what would that be? Like 15, right? And the way that you did it is in your head, you kept a counter that said, okay, he gave me a 5, now I have 5. He gave me a 7, now I have 12. He gave me a 3, now I have 15. So we need to do the same thing here. So usually when we do these types of problems, we have something before the loop, something in the loop, and something after the loop. So the thing we have before the loop is going to be the variable that we're going to use to keep track of our total. I'm going to call it total, and it's going to be equal to 0. Then something in the loop. After we get the grade, we need to modify our total. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the total is equal to total plus grade. And that way, every time I get a grade, I'm adding it to my total. And then something after the loop usually means just printing out the answer. So I'm just going to go ahead and print total like this, and I think we're good. So I'm going to press play. And we're going to say I have 3 grades, I have a 90, I have a 90, and I have a 100. That should be 280. So when I press enter, it is 280. So again, the general strategy, something before the loop, a variable, something in the loop where we modify that variable, and something after the loop where we print out our result. Alright? So that's good, right? We're done? One more. How bad can that one be? Alright, in this problem, we're going to write a program that keeps getting run times from the user until the user types -1. Oh man. Okay, so this one is a little bit different. This one has what we call a sentinel value. A sentinel value is simply a value that we are on the lookout for. So we will keep looping until we see the sentinel value appear, and then we will quit the loop. So I'm going to do the same thing as before. I'm going to clean up my workspace so that you guys don't get too confused. Alright, and I have my basic loop. Alright, so what we're going to do is, the very first thing is we're no longer counting, right? Now we're just getting run times from the user. So this is an example of where our loop control variable is not an I equals 0. It's not a number that we keep counting up. We're not counting to anything. We're going to keep looping until something happens. So the loop control variable is actually the run time that the user provides. So they're going to type in a runtime in the very beginning. And then we're going to keep looping as long as that runtime is not equal to -1, right? So if that's not equal to -1, and every time that it's not equal to -1, we are going to do something. I'm just going to say do something for now. And now we need to modify our loop control variable. So we got a value from the user. We check to see if it's -1. We do something with it, and now we need to get the next runtime from the user. So the way that we do that is we just copy and paste our code. So now we're getting another runtime. We're checking to see if it's -1, and we do something. Then we get another runtime, and we check to see if it's -1, and we do something. This pattern is very common, and it's something we use when we don't know how many times the loop's going to run. It just keeps going until we type -1. So now, what else do we need to do? We need to keep track of how many that are between 50 and 60. Alright, that's fair enough. So if I was to tell you right now that I'm going to give you a bunch of runtimes, and you told me how many are between 50 and 60, could you do it? So for example, 80. How many are between 50 and 60? 0 right now, right? How about 90? Still 0. What about 52? Now we're up to 1. So we need a variable that every time I get a runtime, I check to see if it's between 50 and 60. So like before, something before the loop, something in the loop, and something after the loop. So the thing we need before the loop is a counter, same as what we did with total, that keeps track of how many are between 50 and 60. So I'll call the variable something annoying, some number between 50 and 60, 0. So it's a very long variable. And inside the loop, what am I going to do? I'm going to check the runtime to see if it's between 50 and 60. And notice I said if it's between 50 and 60. So I can say if runtime is greater than or equal to 50 and runtime is less than or equal to 60, because it's inclusive, then every time I find a runtime that's between 50 and 60, the number between 50 and 60, I should add 1 to it. So I'm going to show you a shortcut. If I do this, this is the same as if I was to type number between 50 and 60 equals number between 50. So these are the same thing. So I'll just show you that for fun. And then, let's see, once I have the number between 50 and 60, something after the loop is to print the number between 50 and 60. So let's give this a try. Let's see if this works. I should be able to type numbers over and over, like 50, 60, 40, 30. I should be able to do this forever, right? And when I'm done, I should be able to type -1 and the program should end. And it does. And I would have to go through here and count. Maybe let's try it one more time with actual numbers I will remember. So let's say we had a bunch of run times like this, and then we had a 55 and a 56 and a 40. And now I'm going to take -1. There should only be 2 that are between 50 and 60. And there it is. So here, this is a little bit different. Our loop control variable was not a value that started at 0 and we kept incrementing. It was a variable that we got an input, we checked it to see if it was a certain value, and if it wasn't, we did our job and then we got the next value, and we did the same thing over and over. So I think we're done. I think we've done all the problems. This one is a little bit more challenging, but if you pay attention to how you're doing it, and the part that gets most people is the getting an input before you start the loop. And the reason for that is because what if the user types as the first thing -1? What you want to happen is it comes down here, it says, oh, it's -1, I'm not going to do anything, and quits the program immediately. So that's why, and like I said, this trips up a lot of people. So as long as you are aware of how what you need to do before you enter the loop, you should be okay. So that's it. If you didn't get it, don't worry. We're going to do loops over and over and over. It's comp sci humor. Get used to it. Okay, so we've talked about iterative flow control structures. We've talked about loops, the structure of a loop. We talked about item, and more importantly, we gave you some examples of how you can use a loop to solve problems where you're getting lots of inputs from the user and processing them some way. So remember, there's always something before the loop, something in the loop, and something after the loop. So get started on the labs. Let us know if you have any questions. Take care, and you got this. All right? Bye.